In today's video, we're going to take a look at if this camera, the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, is good at shooting product videos and how it compares to the camera I was previously using, the Sony a7 III. Let's go. So the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro is an amazing camera that can shoot 12-bit 6K RAW, but is it good for shooting product videos? This is what we're gonna find out in this video and how it compares to the camera I was previously using, the Sony a7 III. I will break up this test into a few categories. For example, I'll take a look at the slow motion quality, which is really important when shooting product videos, the color depth, if it really matters compared to other cameras, how the handling is, the ease of use of the Blackmagic. This and much more we're gonna find out in this test. A camera feature that is really important when it comes to product videos is the quality of slow motion it shoots. I will be comparing the Pocket 6K Pro to the camera I was previously using, the Sony a7 III, and just for fun, my iPhone 11, which can shoot up to 240 frames per second. Let's get into it. Slow motion is a very important feature in product videography. I'm testing out how the Blackmagic Pocket is holding up in slow motion compared to the Sony a7 III and my iPhone 11 here. And I'm just gonna drop the GoPro in this bucket of water here and then just compare the three cameras. First, I have to say that the Pocket can shoot up to 120 frames per second. It's just the same as the Sony a7 III. I have to say though that the Pocket has to crop in order to shoot 120 frames per second. It's already a Super 35 sensor, so it's already cropped in compared to a full frame sensor. And to shoot 120 frames per second, we can only shoot that in 2.7K, so it has to crop in even more. And I can show you how much of a difference that makes when you crop in compared to the full sensor, the 6K. The Sony a7 III can also shoot 120 frames per second, but only in full HD, but it uses the full sensor and doesn't have to crop in. The iPhone 11 can shoot up to 240 frames per second, and I can show you how much of a difference that extra frame rate gives you. When you compare the slow motion footage from the Pocket Pro to the Sony a7 III, you don't see a lot of difference. That's because they shoot both 120 frames per second. I always thought that the 120 frames footage out of the a7 III looks a little bit mushy. And in this test, when I compare it to the Pro footage, it kind of looks a little bit better in my opinion. But all in all, they look about the same. Considering the crop factor of the Blackmagic Pro, I would say that the a7 III is a better camera when it comes to slow-mo, even though the footage still looks a little bit mushy in 120 frames per second. If you want a camera that shoots even higher frame rates for product videos, I would recommend the Sony a7 III, but this is a serious price bump from these other two cameras. What I also don't like about the Blackmagic Pocket is how you change the frame rate. Usually the Blackmagic Pocket has a really simple menu, but when it comes to changing the frame rate to 120 frames per second, you first have to change the resolution and then frame by frame bump up the frame rate until you reach the highest possible number. This is a little bit annoying to me. I wish I could see how much of a frame rate I could choose from right off the bat, or there's a quick dial function, but unfortunately I didn't find one so far. Considering in product videos you have a little bit more time to set everything up, this is not a huge con, but it's definitely annoying for me at least. I also wanted to test out how the color depth in those two cameras play out when you shoot product videos. The Blackmagic Pocket can shoot 12-bit RAW and the a7 III can shoot 8-bit. So this is quite a lot of difference in color depth, but you have to consider that most screens can only appear 8-bit color and most of the YouTube content is 8-bit color or the TV content. So I want to see if that 12-bit versus 8-bit color actually makes a difference, and if you could tell by looking at the footage. So if you're looking at the correctly exposed image of both cameras, you can't really tell a difference. Only if you apply a heavy color grade or your image is underexposed or there's a light kind of shining directly down your lens, you can really tell the difference. If you're looking at the a7 III footage, I'm applying a color grade here and you can see the image, the color is falling apart compared to the one from the Blackmagic Pro. Also, when you look at that blue light here, you see there's lots more banding in the 8-bit footage compared to the 12-bit footage, where it's actually really smooth out. The artifacts around that light on the a7 III 8-bit footage are a lot more heavy than on the Blackmagic Pros, and you can actually tell the difference in this shot. So this tells me if you expose your footage correctly and you don't want to apply a heavy color grade, you won't notice the difference really. But if you're a beginner and you want to change the exposure, push the exposure or the saturation, or change the white balance or something, it will give you a lot more freedom if you use a 12-bit color by changing those parameters in post-production. Also, if you want to apply a heavy color grade, you have way more information in a 12-bit footage, so this will result in a way better image after the color grade is done. So I would say that the 12-bit color depth is a good feature to have if you do lots of correcting in post-production. But if you know what you're doing, you can get the same results with an 8-bit codec like the one from the A7 III, because most monitors can actually only display 8-bit color. The Sony A7 III actually has better dynamic range than the Pocket 6K Pro. It's measured at 15 stops compared to the Blackmagic Pro, which is measured at 13 stops. In my opinion, this doesn't matter too much when you shoot product videos, because you tend to have a controlled environment where you can control the lighting and you don't have these high contrast scenarios. So this camera has internal ND filters. Most of the product videos that I'm shooting, at least, they're inside in a controlled environment. If you shoot lots of product videos outside and you need the ND filters actually, this might be a good camera, but at least for me, those ND filters for shooting product video are not really necessary. So if you have the original 6K, you don't necessarily need to upgrade from that. Other than that, for ease of use, it has two mounting points now at the bottom. So if you put it on a tripod plate and you have to move it around a lot, the cameras tend to loosen up a little bit and then you have to fix it again. This might save you a lot of time, because with the two mounting points, you have actually a lot more stability on the tripod and it doesn't easily wiggle and come loose again. Because for product videos, you're actually a lot in the studio or at home. I love to shoot without the battery grip and hardwire it to the AC power. This also saves you a lot of time because you don't have to constantly swap the batteries, which can be real annoying because you set up the shot, everything is prepared, and then you have to swap the batteries. It's a real annoying thing that happens very often to me. This is why I like to hardwire the camera so this doesn't happen. Also, this camera is a lot heavier than my Sony A7 III. So when I, for example, mount it on a slider vertically, it doesn't have enough power to draw it up and down. And I don't know what equipment you have, but this might be a con for you. Because the camera is way heavier, you might not be able to use certain equipment with the camera that you need for your product videos. Might be a slider, might be a gimbal. Just keep in mind that the camera is a lot chunkier than a normal mirrorless camera, but it for sure is possible to mount it on a gimbal. Might be a little bit harder and chunkier to get it on, but it still works. What I like about the Blackmagic is that when I record to an external SSD, and for product videos, you might want to check your footage often if the shot works out, so you don't have to constantly transfer the files to your computer. You just plug in the SSD to your computer and you can change it instantly from the SSD you were recording on. You don't have to transfer it, you just have to plug it in, which saves you a lot of time if you have to check your shots really often. Just as a quick side note, because it's not really common when you shoot product videos that you shoot handheld, the camera being more heavy might actually be a good thing if you're shooting a lot of handheld stuff, because you have a better grip and you have actually more weight to the camera. You get that natural cinematic shake, which you don't get from the light mirrorless cameras. So if you shoot a lot of handheld stuff, the extra weight might be actually a good thing. I also appreciate the possibility to have a big screen and to actually put a lot on it so I see how the shot looks. This is an advantage over the A7 III because I have to use an external monitor, which costs an extra $300–400 bucks, which the Blackmagic already has included. I like that the 6K Pro does have a flip screen now, because for example when I mount the camera upside down, it's hard to see the screen if it's fixed. Now I can easily tilt it up and down and be able to frame the shot right. So overall, I think that the Blackmagic 6K Pro is not the perfect camera when shooting product videos. I think that it serves a different purpose. I think that it's better for music videos or short films. This is where the camera really shines and really where the image quality shines through. For shooting products, the serious crop in the slow motion 120 frames really bothers me. Also, it doesn't have the ability to shoot 240 frames per second. And the advantages of the 12-bit RAW might be good if you're a beginner or do a heavy color grade. But if you know what you're doing, you can even get away with an 8-bit codec. Also, because the camera is quite heavy, the equipment you have might not be working as well. For example, if you have a slider, it might not be able to pull up the camera and you might not get the shot. So to sum it up, it's still possible to shoot good product videos on this camera, but I think there's better cameras out there, like for example the Sony A7S III, which can shoot up to 240 frames per second, has a flip LCD screen, is lightweight, but also costs double the price of the Blackmagic Pro. That being said, I will use the Blackmagic Pro for shooting music videos or narrative work, for example, short films. But I will for sure shoot some product videos on this camera. But for all the other stuff, I'll still be using my A7 III, which is a great little camera as well. So that's it again. Thanks so much for sticking around until the end of the video. I hope you learned something today. A free and easy way to support the channel is hit that like button. And if you like my content, you might consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. If you have any questions, shoot me a message on Instagram at sebpiccinema, and I will see you in the next video.